Welcome back to Texas Liberty Podcast. I'm Clark Patterson, and tonight, along with Ted Brown, we'll be interviewing the Libertarian Party 2024 candidate for Texas Railroad Commissioner, and that is Hawk Dunlap. And it is now, we're recording on Thursday night, August 1st, 2024. So, Ted, why don't you start off the questioning of Hawk Dunlap?
Well, Hawk, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you on. You can start. Tell us what does the Railroad Commissioner do, and why are you running for this position?
So the Railroad Commission of Texas is three commissioners. They serve 6-year terms each. They regulate oil and gas, surface mining, and intrastate pipelines, which are pipelines that originate and end in the state of Texas. They were formed in the 1800s, primarily when railroads were being placed to protect the landowner. They inherited the oil and gas business over time, and they still regulated railroads up until 2005 when they passed that obligation on to the Department of Transportation. Why they are still called the Railroad Commission for that, I think it's a bit of a silly name. I grew up in the oil industry. As a kid, we all knew what the Railroad Commission did and what their duties were. But with so many people, since Texas has diversified so much, and oil and gas is not necessarily the primary industry in the state, there's a lot of people that don't know what the Railroad Commission does. They think if a train comes by your house at 2 o'clock in the morning, blowing the horn too loud, that those are the people to call, and that's about as far from the truth as it could be. So I believe that the agency keeps the name as the Railroad Commission to kind of give it a shield from the public from letting them know what they really do.
So you mean like calling it Energy Commission or something like that instead?
Right. I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand what the hangup is. I said in another interview, they say it'll cost $1 million to change the name and the logo, and you've got to get the legislature to agree to it. You know, I've seen them waste millions, plugging wells under the orphan well program and still not plugging the wells. So I don't know why they couldn't come up with $1 million to change the name where everybody can figure out what they do.
Well, that's like any government agency. They spend on what they want to spend on, and not what might give them more transparency there.
I agree. It's there's no transparency in the agency, and I basically I'm a 6th generation Texas. I'm a Texan. I'm 4th generation oil and gas business. Graduated from Stephen F. Austin State University. I worked my way through school in the oil field. I started in 1991 as a summer job, and I'm still on my endless summer.
Wow.
I've lived overseas for 27 years in Europe, South America, Singapore, Indonesia, Dubai. I worked primarily for the last 25 years in well control, oil well firefighting, blowouts, critical well integrity. Had no intentions of ever coming back to Texas. I was living in Bali, Indonesia, on a golf course overlooking the Indian Ocean, and by a series of events, I ended up out here in West Texas excavating and inspecting plug wells that are leaking. And I've excavated to date close to 150, and I can say 3 or 4 are actually plugged. The rest are leaking some form or fashion, whether it be crude oil, produced water, or gas. And so I've been working on a 22,000 acre ranch, and I've been working for other ranchers around West Texas. And this problem is spread over to East Texas, where the Haynesville Shale play is, and down to South Texas in McMullen County. So these things that I'm working on right now are under the direct jurisdiction of the Railroad Commission. But they've turned a blind eye to it. I actually last Saturday I excavated a well that the Railroad Commission allegedly plugged in 2023 under the orphan well program. I excavated it for a landowner, and it's leaking hydrocarbons, water, and gas. So, and that's the 4th well that I've excavated that was plugged under the orphan well program. So there's multiple failures at the commission. None of the commissioners that are currently seated have any oil and gas experience. They're full-time politicians as far as I can tell. So this is, like I said, I wish this was a resume drop where I can just print my resume. But unfortunately it's a political race. I had the opportunity to run for the Libertarian Party of Texas, and I'm grateful for that honor and hope to make a showing in November.
Well, excellent, excellent. So basically, you're saying that your opponent, Christi Craddock, is a politician. She's been in office for a while there. So you're saying she doesn't really know much about the business, or she picked it up on the job and is just follows what her staff says, or what lobbyists say? What would be the situation there?
As I understand, her father is the longest sitting representative in the state of Texas. I think he's been in office for 58 years. He loaned her $500,000 to run the first time she ran for Railroad Commission. She's an attorney. She worked for a oil and gas lobbying firm before she was seated on the Railroad Commission. And if you look, and her family made, I believe, in 2022, $10 million off of the oil and gas industry that her and her dad are supposed to be regulating. So, there's a huge conflict of interest there. You've got Wayne Christian on the other hand, who's a financial planner and also another long-term politician. The Houston Chronicle came out last year and spent some time with us, seeing what we were up to, and did a 3-part series on us on a Sunday. Wayne Christian, who has zero oil and gas experience, wrote an op-ed on Tuesday calling me basically a liar. So, and I've been doing this coming on for 34 years now. So, they do not want the public to understand, to know the truth. They don't want the public to see their failures. And if I didn't feel like this fight was good enough and needed to be fought, I'd be back in Bali, Indonesia on my golf course. But I've moved back to Texas, which I really had no intention of doing, because I see that this is something that needs to be taken care of and it needs to be handled.
Okay, well, understandable. Now, have you ever had any involvement in politics at all, anywhere in your past, or have you tried to assiduously avoid becoming involved in politics?
I was senior class vice president.
Okay, that goes back a ways.
Nobody else run, and my mom was the student council sponsor, so she wrote my name in and I won. So I don't even think I ever went to a meeting. So that's about as close to politics as I've ever come. I lived overseas for 27 years, and of course I just wasn't involved in anything over there. I had no intentions of getting involved over here, but I've been to 103 countries around the world. Some work, some play. I cannot believe what I see out here. This is the conditions out here in West Texas and in Texas in general. Some of the subsurface conditions are some of the worst I've ever seen. And it would be stupid of me to see all this and have the experience I have and turn a blind eye and jump on an airplane and go back home. I don't think that I would sleep well at night. And that's what motivates me. I'm not a money guy. But seeing how landowners here are getting screwed over by the commission, how oil companies are being they're just running amok over here. The Railroad Commission is siding with the industry instead of the Texans that they've sworn to protect. And I know from my experience that I'm the one that can fix it. And I tell people I'm not the polished politician that Texans want. I was not born with the innate ability to pee on your leg and convince you it's raining. But in this particular race, in this particular office, I'm the one that Texans need, and I firmly believe that in my heart.
Well, great. Well, I just have one more question before I turn it over to Clark, and that is, now you mentioned about private landowners getting shafted by the oil industry and all. How are they being shafted, and what actually could be done about that?
Well, just a quick case in point. One particular landowner in Pecos County has roughly 20 to 25 orphan wells on their plates. They're leaking crude oil, they're leaking hydrogen sulfide, which is a poisonous gas. And some of the wells are directly behind their house. They drive from Pecos County to Austin to attend the open meetings of the Railroad Commission, and they're patronized, they're blown off. These people need these wells plugged, and they've been fighting the Railroad Commission for 10 plus years. And they can't get them to come out. And the one time they did get them to come out, they plugged one well, and that's one of the ones that I dug up that was plugged in 2023, a little over a year ago, and it's leaking. So, they kick these numbers around, like in 2023 under the orphan well program, which, by the way, Texas should not have the orphan well problem that we have. But they love to brag that they plugged 1,750 orphan wells in 2023. I made a Twitter post the other day that I scratched the 1,750 out, and I wrote 1,749, and I'm gonna keep digging them up until I get their attention, and they come out and start trying to do things the right way.
Okay, all right, Clark, do you have anything?
Sure. Well, actually, just so you'll know, Hawk, I actually grew up in Houston years ago when it was all oil and gas. In fact, I lived as a kindergartner up to third grade in the Netherlands, in Holland, because my father was transferred over there. But I say all that because I know almost diddly squat about the oil business. I mean, I'm just a city boy, but this is what I do know, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this, since you're obviously in the oil and gas business. We keep reading, and I think I might even speak for Ted here, again, not knowing much about the way you deal with the oil business 24/7, but we keep hearing about how there are people, both, well, mostly in Congress, that they don't want an oil industry. They want, like, to move to renewables. Now, you can almost hear in the tone of my voice, Hawk, I think it's ridiculous, but there are people, some of the squad members up in Congress, they keep talking about how somehow the world's going to blow up unless we completely forswear all, fossil fuels and carbon energy. And now tell me if I'm wrong about this. And the one thing I can, I guess, say about Wayne Christian and maybe Christi Craddock is, I don't think they're on that train. I mean, I think they want to keep the oil business, and I think it needs to be kept. And I think it's ridiculous to think that somehow Congress is going to tell the whole country that, hey, we're going all renewable and all electric. Even my car company, I drive a Kia. I was down at the dealership a few weeks ago, and they're like, oh, yeah, all the cars are going to be electric by 2034. And I'm like, well, I know. I saw Ted's expression. So again, you can hear my ignorance in what I'm saying, but hopefully there's a future for oil and gas and fossil fuels. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. And I'll tell you what, I've spoken. Eddie Espinoza is the Green Party candidate, and he actually drove up from Laredo, and he and I spent 8 hours in a truck, and we agreed on everything. And eventually, fossil fuels are going to disappear. Eventually, they're not going away anytime soon. Oil and gas has fed my family for 4 generations. I've got a 13-year-old daughter who's asking the right questions and interested. I'm hopeful there's going to be a 5th. There quite possibly going to be a 6th. Oil and gas isn't going away anytime soon. Hey, I'm a fan of all energy, wind and solar, but who regulates the wind and the solar? they're going to have retirement obligations as well, like our orphan wells. And this, we need to encompass that into the Energy Commission of Texas, or however they want to change the name to it. Because they're going to have retirement obligations. There's going to have to be some things put in place to hold those people accountable too. Oil and gas isn't going away. Washington can spout all the vomit they want about it, but we're not going away anytime soon. And most definitely, I'll fight for it. I actually attended an EPA, Oxy, Railroad Commission pep rally, if you will, a couple of weeks ago in Odessa, where they're fixing to start doing carbon capture and underground storage. And I'm going to tell you from practical experience that the dumbest idea to ever come across my eyes. As far as Texas is concerned, we can't keep our produced water in the ground. We have fugitive emissions that can be, fixed with just a little bit of effort and a little bit of money. And now they're wanting to start pumping CO2 in the ground and polluting our groundwater even more. And as you can see behind me, this was an oil well fire in Kuwait that I worked on. And it looks kind of scary, but it's not near as scary as a CO2 blowout will be. You can't light CO2. It's hard to work around. At least with this oil and gas, you can set it on fire and you can work on it. CO2, you don't have that option. So it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's a scam. The government is paying Oxy to build these plants and to drill these wells, and then Oxy's going to get a tax credit for however many tons of carbon they put away. And that's going to alleviate their tax burden on their oil and gas production. So, most of that's going to be free probably. So it's a dumb idea. And if I'm on the commission, I'll never vote for a CO2 class 6 injection well storage permit. I'm just not going to do it.
Now, my understanding is that the U.S. and including all the, because Texas has so much oil, we really are energy independent with oil. However, we can't use all the oil because the refineries can't process a lot of it because of the type of oil it is, and that's why there's still imports from the Middle East and other areas. Is there any way to solve that? Because I think it's a national security issue about not having to depend on some of these crazy countries for our energy.
We haven't built. Gosh, don't quote me. It's 40 years. Maybe we haven't built a new refinery because we can't get permits for it. And and that's a battle that's going to have to be fought. If we're truly going to be energy independent, we're going to have all forms of energy, and we're going to have to spend some money, and we're going to have to build some new refineries where we can drill, produce, and refine our own hydrocarbons, and we can do it in a safe manner. It has to be regulated. It has to be the rules have to be enforced. We can't cut corners. And this little incident here behind me is one of the results when you cut corners. And we can't have any of that.
Okay, Clark.
What are your views, Hawk, on nuclear energy? Because I'm curious, you mentioned how you and the Green Party candidate agreed on a lot. I was kind of on the superficial impression that the Greens are the people who want to go like completely carbon free, have the government come in and say, okay, in a certain year we're going to go carbon free, but basically, yeah. So what is your position on nuclear, and how really do you, obviously you have to disagree with the Green Party on a lot of things, and maybe you can expound on that.
No, like I said earlier, I am for all forms of energy. I don't think we can have too much. And I think we need to get it wherever we get it. I mean, we're having a population explosion. There's thousands of people moving to Texas every month. We got to keep the lights on somehow. And if it means, natural gas, coal, nuclear, wind, and solar, all working together to provide people what we need, then by God, that's what we need to do to go get it. As far as the Green Party, I was really surprised. Like I said, we spent 8 hours in a truck together, driving around West Texas, and I was showing him what I worked on and some of the other problems we're facing here. We agreed on carbon capture. We agreed on the orphan well problem. We agreed on everything. There was one thing that we had a discussion on that we really didn't see eye to eye, and that's a pipeline that's going to gather gas here in West Texas and pipeline it down to Brownsville and liquefy it and sell it. And he was under the impression that it was going to go to Africa and we should encourage them for solar and wind power. But also my position was, we are doing so much flaring of gas and we're wasting our resources. Why couldn't we have another outlet to market these resources and also reduce our emissions at the same time? And that was really the only heavy discussion we got in, and I was really surprised. I've met with environmental groups before, and bottom line, we all want the same thing. We want to do better, and we can do better. Their language is a bit strong, and I've said that. When you have over 400,000 people in Texas working in the oil and gas industry, and you start screaming, "We're going to shut the oil and gas industry down," you're not going to get any support, and people won't listen to you. If the language changes to, we are eventually going to be moving away from hydrocarbons, which that's going to happen at some point in time. We're going to get away. It may not be within the next 50, 100 years, but sooner or later, we're going to start getting away from the traditional ways that we produced energy. But you can't just come out and say we're going to shut it down in 2030. I mean, it's not going to happen. And it would be detrimental to our state. It'd be detrimental to our country and to the world as a whole. I guarantee you, China and India aren't giving up hydrocarbons. And I've been in both places. So, they're not going to stop burning coal. They're not going to stop burning natural gas. And, there are cleaner, better ways that we can conduct our business as it is right now. It's typical kindergarten rules. You make a mess, you clean it up. And we've been making a mess for 50 years. And, we've got to pause and we've got to focus and start trying to get these messes cleaned up before we can go try something new.
Right. It seems like some of those other countries like China and India do produce an awful lot of carbon emissions. And when there's like a lot of people complaining about climate change and all that, they're only talking about the U.S. and Western Europe and Western countries changing our ways to accommodate that, and not blaming the countries that are really much more pollutant than we are. And it seems like whether you agree with climate change is happening or not, whatever the solution is, it just happens to just totally intersect with what the long-term left-wing green agenda is, and wouldn't necessarily do anything to cool the planet. What would be your take on that?
No, I agree, and I'm not a climate change denier. I mean, something is happening. I've read bits and pieces. I don't agree with all of it. But I know firsthand, these wells that are leaking methane, you can fix a lot of those leaks with a little thread tape and a pipe wrench and a little time. And, focusing on things of that nature or what we need to be focused on. I know overseas, and like I said, I've been just about everywhere. Those people are going to take whatever's cheap and easy. I don't know why the burden has been put on the United States to lead the way. I believe that there's a roadmap that we can get there without shutting down fossil fuels and without putting nearly 500,000 people out of work. And we'll get there. I think a lot of these people that speak of these certain things, number one, they've never worked in the oil and gas industry. Number two, they probably haven't traveled as extensively as I have. So, you know, they're looking through blinders, and I don't think they're getting the whole message of what could be done here, and what's the silliness. I mean, you build a carbon capture plant, you start pumping it into the ground, and you know, it eats up the steel, it pollutes the groundwater. They don't really understand the mechanics that are involved in all of this. It just sounds like a great idea, and the government's going to kick some money to it. I'd rather see that money go to our public schools, or you know, go to school teacher salary increases, go to our infrastructure, you know, building roads, fixing roads. I mean, if you hadn't been down I-20 lately, I mean, good Lord. There's so much that can be done that's actually going to help the country and help the state, other than some cockamamie scheme of pumping, you know, toxic gas back in the ground.
Okay. Clark?
Well, yeah, you know, you mentioned a couple of things there a few minutes ago, Hawk, and I've always believed in principle that there's really no reason why oil and gas and even coal, we can have clean coal, we can have clean oil and gas if the government just gets out of the way and rephrases and reformulates its policies. But you know, again, here in Austin, there are people, I see people, you know, upper middle class people riding their bikes because they think, you know, and you know, there's kind of a moral smugness, like somehow, you know, maybe they even keep their homes a lot warmer in the summer and cooler in the winter. And, you know, I'm just a middle class person, but I kind of laugh at these folks, but they really seem to think that somehow, you know, they're morally smug because, you know, they're riding their bike and I'm getting in my car on a 100-degree day like today, running the AC. And I'm always of the opinion that, hey, let's keep the fossil fuels. Let's just make them cleaner. And you know, we don't need to like go off these like you agree with too. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, isn't it in principle true that we could have clean coal and or at least clean oil and gas?
Oh, we can for sure. And the issues that I'm seeing are more or less, you know, corner cutting and laziness. The reason why we have so many fugitive emissions. And like I said earlier, you know, there's some of these things are a pretty cheap fix. You know, even plugging wells properly, so they don't leak anymore, instead of just, you know, dumping cement down a hole, covering it up, and walking away, and putting a tick on the box saying we plugged another one. So many of these things uh, come to light when you're actually into it. And as far as the people riding their bikes, you know, they need to understand their tires are made from petroleum products as well. So, you know, thanks for wearing out the tread on your bike, and you know, we're going to keep making some tires.
That's great. Well, listen, believe it or not, we're coming down to our last minute. So let us have you, Hawk, tell people where they can find you. Evidently, sounds like you have a pretty active social media presence. So why don't we have you kind of sum up, obviously the reason people should support you, and also where people can find you, either you know your website, your I guess your X account, and you know these other different social media accounts.
Sure, all my social media accounts are at Hawk Dunlap. That's X and TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, and I've recently, my son is a national, I don't know where he got this, but he's a National Junior Honor Society student, and a whiz with a computer. We got the website up a couple of days ago while I was sitting on a well watching Chevron try to re-enter a plug well that was leaking, and he sat in the back of the truck and we built the website. So it's a work in progress. It's up. It's Hawk number 4 Texas.com. And it's up there, and it also has some contact information on there as well. I believe it has been decades since anyone who sat on the Railroad Commission had actual hands-on oil and gas experience, and has been in the field and gotten crude oil underneath their fingernails. I always say, if you've never worked in the oil and gas industry, you should not regulate, legislate, or litigate oil and gas. It should be a hands-off deal. We can take care of our own. The Railroad Commission is supposed to be the agency that enforces the rules that are set for operating in Texas, and instead they've gone rogue and they're promoting the industry, which is part of the job, but not at the expense of landowners and taxpayers in the state. And we're going to flip that around, and we're going to put the commission back on the side of Texans, and we're going to start enforcing the rules and actually getting some experience into the agency. Gosh, in the 2.5 years that I've been back in Texas, I've seen some of the decisions the commission has made in the field, and more especially with some of their engineering decisions on how to plug a well, and if there's ever a criminal malpractice charge that could be levied on someone, some of the people the Railroad Commission should have the death penalty, from some of the boneheaded decisions they've made. So, they're and there's some good people there. I mean, all the agency is not that way, but there's a good many people that are inexperienced and trying to do things as cheap as possible. And I'm sorry, plugging the well in this orphan well program is in this problem we have. There's nothing cheap about it, and we have to change the way that we conduct our business when permanently plugging these wells. I tell people all the time that, what I've been doing out here, we have cadaver farms all over the United States, and we study the decomposition of bodies for forensic scientists and to aid them in forensic investigations. And what I've been doing out here is digging up. Nobody ever dug up a plugged well to see if it was still plugged before, and we have, and we know that they're not plugged. So we know that wells that were plugged 50 years ago are not plugged today. So we have a 22,000 acre cadaver farm out here. And I encourage anybody who wants to come see to contact me, and I'll take you for a tour. I mean, you can see it on my social media, and you can read about it in the media. But until you're standing over it and actually looking at it and smelling it, it'll never register with you. We've got a hell of a problem here. And we can turn the tides on it if the right people get in the right places and start to focus on it.
Well, great. Well, listen, Hawk, we're coming to the end now, so this episode should drop by early tomorrow morning. I'll send you an email now that I have your email address, Hawk. And of course, I'll let Ted know. He shares them usually on Facebook, these episodes of ours, and I share it, of course, on X and on YouTube. And of course, you've done a great job convincing everyone. Well, me, in fact, I was kind of pessimistic about the future of fossil fuels, but I feel just in this last half hour, I feel a whole lot better now about it. So again, thanks so much for joining us, and I'll send that email with this episode sometime early tomorrow morning. And Ted, do you have any last minute
No, well, just Hawk, thanks so much for being on. I actually learned a lot, so I was very happy to hear what you had to say, and good luck in the election.
And thanks, gentlemen, for reaching out and having me on. I appreciate you including me in all this.
Well, thank you again. And just to wrap up, like we like to do here at Texas Liberty Podcast, we want to remind everybody that tyranny exists when the people fear the government. Liberty exists when the government fears the people. Go out and show the government you're not scared. Good night, gentlemen.
Good night.